A person making $150,000 a year should feel comfortable. At least that's what most Americans used to believe. Yet, in 2026, something strange is happening. People with good jobs feel stressed. Families earning six figures are delaying vacations. Parents are putting groceries on credit cards. And some Americans who followed every piece of traditional financial advice are asking a question that would have sounded ridiculous 20 years ago. How am I making this much money and still feeling broke? It's the financial equivalent of training for a marathon, crossing the finish line, and discovering someone quietly moved it another 5 miles down the road. The weird part? Many of these people aren't actually poor. They're employed, they're paying their bills, some are even contributing to retirement accounts. Yet every month feels like a race against a clock that's moving faster than they are. So what changed? Because if millions of Americans suddenly feel broke at the same time, this isn't just a personal finance story, it's a national story. And the real reason is far more complicated than inflation. Meet David. He's 42 years old, he lives outside Denver, he works in project management. His wife is a nurse. Together, they earn around $160,000 a year. 10 years ago, David imagined this income would feel like success. Instead, last month, his water heater failed. The repair cost nearly $2,000. His property taxes increased, his car insurance increased, his grocery bill increased, his daughter's sports expenses increased, and by the end of the month, David found himself staring at his checking account, wondering where all the money went. Again. At this point, checking his bank account felt less like reviewing finances and more like watching a true crime documentary where the victim was his paycheck. Now here's what's fascinating. David isn't bad with money. In fact, he's more financially responsible than many people. And that's exactly why his story matters, because millions of Americans see themselves in David. They aren't recklessly spending, they aren't buying private jets, they're not ordering champagne on yachts, they're simply trying to maintain what used to be considered a normal middle-class life. You know, the wildly extravagant dream of owning a home, buying groceries, and occasionally eating at a restaurant without needing a small business loan. And that's where the mystery begins. Most people think the problem is inflation. It isn't, at least not entirely. Inflation is the visible problem. The hidden problem is something economists rarely explain in personal terms. It's the growing gap between income reality and lifestyle reality. Think about a treadmill. Imagine the speed slowly increasing every year. Not enough for you to notice immediately, but enough that eventually you're running just to stay in the same place. That's what many Americans are experiencing. The treadmill keeps speeding up, and meanwhile, the economy is standing beside it saying, "Good news, you're getting exercise." The cost of maintaining a normal life has accelerated faster than people's sense of financial progress. And because the changes happened gradually, many people never realized how much the treadmill speed increased. Here's where things get interesting. According to data from the Federal Reserve and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, wages have risen over time. That's true, but many essential expenses have risen faster in key areas that dominate household budgets: housing, insurance, healthcare, childcare, education. These aren't luxury purchases, they're the foundation of everyday life. And when foundations become more expensive, everything above them becomes harder to afford. Nobody wakes up and says, "Honey, this year let's splurge on car insurance." Yet somehow the bill keeps acting like it's a luxury experience. Imagine a bucket filled with water. Your paycheck is the water entering the bucket. Expenses are the holes. For decades, Americans focused on increasing the flow of water. Get a promotion, work harder, earn more. But today, many households face a different challenge. The holes are getting larger. So even when more money enters the bucket, it feels like less remains. But that's still not the biggest surprise, because another force is quietly making the problem worse: human psychology. Behavioral economists have studied something called adaptation. Humans quickly become accustomed to new circumstances. A bigger house becomes normal, a nicer neighborhood becomes normal, streaming subscriptions become normal, 2 cars become normal. What once felt like success eventually feels like baseline reality, and somewhere along the way, Americans went from having 3 television channels to paying for 8 streaming services and still somehow finding nothing to watch. This phenomenon isn't new, but in 2026, it's colliding with higher costs in a way that creates enormous financial pressure. People aren't comparing themselves to their parents anymore. They're comparing themselves to everyone online, every day, every hour, every scroll. A family sees luxury vacations, someone else's renovated kitchen, a new SUV, a dream backyard, and without realizing it, their definition of normal slowly changes. Social media has become the only place where a 28-year-old appears to own 3 businesses, a beachfront property, 6-pack abs, and unlimited free time, all before breakfast. The result is what psychologists sometimes call relative deprivation. You may be doing objectively well, but if everyone around you appears to be doing better, you feel behind, even when you're not. And social media has become a machine that constantly moves the finish line. But wait, there's another number almost nobody talks about: net worth. Most Americans focus on income, understandably so. Income pays the bills, but wealth is different. Income is what you earn, wealth is what you keep. A person earning $250,000 with massive debt can feel poorer than someone earning $90,000 who owns assets and lives below their means. In other words, looking rich and being rich are sometimes distant cousins who only see each other during the holidays. That's why 2 households with identical salaries can experience completely different levels of financial stress. One family owns assets that work for them, the other family owns liabilities that demand payments from them. From the outside, both lives may look similar. Behind closed doors, they're worlds apart. And this leads to the biggest twist in the entire story. Many Americans don't feel broke because they're earning too little. They feel broke because the modern economy has made financial success harder to see. Think about previous generations. A home often represented visible progress. A pension represented visible security. A growing savings account represented visible momentum. Today, many people work harder, earn more, and still struggle to feel forward movement, not because they're failing, but because the signals of progress have become blurred. It's a little like upgrading from economy class to business class, and then realizing the airport keeps moving farther away every year. It's like climbing a mountain in heavy fog. You might be gaining elevation, but if you can't see the summit, it feels like you're standing still, and that's psychologically exhausting. This helps explain why financial stress now affects households across multiple income levels. It's not only about dollars, it's about certainty. It's about feeling secure. It's about believing the future will be easier than the present. When that belief weakens, even high earners can feel financially vulnerable. And that's exactly what's happening across America. Millions of people aren't asking, "How do I become rich?" They're asking a much simpler question. Can 1 month go by without a surprise bill trying to audition for the role of main character? So let's go back to David. Remember the project manager earning $160,000? At the beginning of this story, it looked like his problem was money, but by now we can see a bigger picture. His challenge isn't just rising prices, it's a combination of higher living costs, lifestyle expectations, invisible financial pressure, shifting social comparisons, and uncertainty about the future. The feeling of being broke isn't always a reflection of what's in your bank account. Sometimes it's a reflection of where you thought you'd be and where you are. And that's an important distinction. Because once you understand the real problem, you stop blaming yourself for symptoms and start addressing causes. Here on Springfield Wealth, we often talk about wealth as more than income, because true financial strength isn't about looking rich, it's about creating a life where unexpected expenses don't create panic, where your money buys freedom instead of stress, where progress is measured by stability, not appearances. And maybe that's the lesson millions of Americans are beginning to learn in 2026. Feeling broke and being broke aren't always the same thing,
But understanding the difference might be one of the most valuable financial skills you can develop, because sometimes the problem isn't that you're terrible with money. Sometimes you're playing a financial game where the rules quietly changed while everyone was busy comparing vacation photos online. My name is Max, and if this story sounded familiar, you're definitely not alone. In fact, judging by the comments you're probably about to leave, neither is David.